5 hardest shadow tests that shape a dark chosen one's peak power. There are chosen ones, and then there are dark chosen ones, those rare souls who are not only marked by the divine but shaped in the fires of solitude, rejection, chaos, and inner war. They're not chosen for comfort, they're chosen for consequence. A dark chosen one is not just a spiritual being sent to raise the vibration of the planet. They are a walking storm, a living paradox marked by a frequency that both heals and disrupts. And their power, it's not inherited. It's earned, not through books, not through rituals, not through affirmations, but through surviving the 5 hardest shadow tests that most people would never dare to face. These tests are not academic. They're not poetic. They're brutal, raw, and deeply personal. But they are also the keys to unlocking the kind of inner power that cannot be faked or borrowed. Let me start by asking you something that only the real ones will understand. What if your worst seasons weren't mistakes, but initiations? What if the betrayals, the collapses, the nights where you questioned your sanity, what if those weren't signs of failure, but signs that you were being forged into something no one around you could even recognize? That's the truth about the dark chosen path. It's not about being better than others. It's about being willing to walk where most people refuse to even glance. And it is in these places, these dark, unlit corridors of the soul, that the 5 shadow tests reveal themselves.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The first test is the rejection of the tribe. This one happens early. You're still young, still forming, and already you feel it. You don't quite belong. Your family may love you, but they don't understand you. Your friends connect with you, but only to a point. You see through things too quickly. You ask questions that make people uncomfortable. You carry a frequency that others can't quite name, but they can feel, and it makes them distance themselves. You spend years thinking something is wrong with you. That maybe if you just toned it down, made yourself smaller, more normal, more digestible, they'd accept you. But no matter how much you try, the rejection keeps happening. And eventually you realize they weren't rejecting you. They were rejecting the frequency you carried because it threatened their illusions. That's the first test. Can you survive being the outsider, the scapegoat, the one no one understands, and still keep your heart open? You see, the divine doesn't test a dark chosen one to punish them. It tests them to purify them. And nothing purifies faster than isolation. Because when no one affirms you, you're forced to affirm yourself. When no one validates your truth, you're forced to embody it. That's how you begin to remember who you are, not through applause, but through aloneness. And once you pass that first test, something unlocks inside you, an unshakable knowing that even if the whole world leaves, you still remain. That's power. The second test is betrayal by the mirror. This one cuts the deepest. It doesn't come from strangers or enemies. It comes from the ones you trusted most. A mentor, a lover, a best friend, someone who saw your soul and still chose to wound it. And this betrayal doesn't just hurt emotionally, it fractures your identity. Because you saw them as an extension of yourself. You believed they were part of your destiny. And when they turned on you, it wasn't just their loyalty that broke, it was your perception of who you are in relationship to others. That's the shadow test hiding inside betrayal. Can you still honor your own path when someone you loved becomes the villain in your story? Most people fail this test. They become bitter, guarded. They swear off connection. But the dark chosen one must learn something deeper. You must learn that betrayal is not the end of trust, it is the beginning of discernment. You don't stop loving, you just love wiser. You don't stop giving, you just give from overflow, not emptiness. The betrayal wasn't there to destroy you. It was there to extract the parts of you that still needed external validation. And once those parts are burned away, what's left is clean, real, sovereign. That's the gift hidden in the test, if you can see it. The third test is known as the collapse of the false self. This one feels like death, because in a way it is. It's the death of the mask you didn't even know you were wearing. The persona you built to survive, to be liked, to succeed, to feel worthy. It starts to crack. Maybe you lose your job. Maybe your relationships fall apart. Maybe your mental health spirals. Everything you thought made you begins to disintegrate. And you're left staring at an empty shell. Who are you when you're no longer impressive? Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when everything external is stripped away? This test is terrifying because it demands total surrender. That you can't fake your way through this one. You can't escape it with distractions. You have to sit in the ashes and let the old you burn. And it hurts. It feels like failure, but it's not. It's a sacred unmaking, a divine demolition. Only after this collapse can you begin to build something real. Not a personality, not an identity, but a presence. This is the moment when the dark chosen one stops trying to be somebody and starts becoming nobody, and in that nothingness discovers their everything. This is only the beginning. If you felt yourself walking through these tests, know this: you're not being punished. You're being prepared. The darkness isn't your enemy. It's your initiation. And on the other side of it lies a version of you so powerful, so clear, so anchored that even the shadows will bow to your light. The sacred breakdown: how the fourth shadow test destroys everything you thought you knew about power. There's a point in every true dark chosen one's journey where everything collapses, not just externally, but internally. The mind cracks. The beliefs you once swore by suddenly feel hollow. And your spiritual tools, your affirmations, your meditations, they stop working. You're not just lost. You're undone, and no one can save you from it. This is the fourth, and perhaps most sacred shadow test: the breaking of the inner compass. It's not about failure. It's not about punishment. It's about recalibration. Because before you can wield divine power, you must first unlearn every false version of what you thought power was. This part of the journey feels like insanity. And that's not an exaggeration. You begin to question everything: your purpose, your past choices, your intuition, even your own sanity. You ask questions like, have I been delusional this whole time? What if I'm not chosen? What if I've just been imagining all of it? And here's the secret truth: that's exactly the point. This test is designed to bring you face to face with your deepest doubt, not so it can destroy you, but so you can discover what's real underneath the illusion. Because until now, your power has likely been tied to outcomes, the results, recognition, some form of external feedback. But the breaking of the inner compass removes all of that. It leaves you in a void, an abyss, a space where nothing responds to your energy the way it used to. You pray and feel silence. You act and feel no impact. You speak and feel invisible. And it's in that silence that you're given the rarest gift of all, the chance to meet your pure, unfiltered self, the version of you that exists with zero applause, at zero confirmation, and zero support. But this part of the path is brutal because it strips away the ego's last strongholds. It reveals every place where you were still trying to earn your worth, prove your holiness, or control the outcome. It shows you how much of your faith was actually performance, how much of your wisdom was borrowed, how much of your clarity was attached to control. And when the compass breaks, you can't navigate anymore. You don't know what's true. You don't know what's next. You don't even know who you are. And that, my friend, is exactly where real power begins. Because real power doesn't come from knowing. It comes from presence, from being fully here, fully surrendered, fully real. When the compass is broken, you're forced to stop relying on direction and start relying on connection. You stop trying to figure out the path and begin to feel it. You stop demanding answers from the universe and start listening to the silence. And in that listening, something ancient awakens inside you. It's not a thought. It's not a belief. It's a frequency, a knowing beyond knowing, a power that doesn't need to be seen to exist. Let me ask you something that only this version of you can answer. Who are you without your story? Not your trauma, not your achievements, not your spiritual language, just you. If everything you've ever known about yourself was stripped away in one night, would anything sacred still remain? Or would you vanish into the narratives you've outgrown? This is why the fourth test is sacred. Because it doesn't just break you, it reveals you. And here's something most people will never tell you: many don't pass this test. They get stuck here. They confuse the silence for abandonment. They confuse the void for punishment. They go back to old patterns, old identities, old comforts, just to feel something again. But the dark chosen one, the real one, they don't run. They sit in the fire. They let it burn away every false layer. And they emerge not with answers, but with essence. Not with control, but with clarity. Not with egoic certainty, but with energetic truth. Because after this test you become different. People feel it. You speak less, but your presence says more. You do less, but your energy moves more. You no longer seek validation because you've met the version of you that doesn't need it. You've walked through the dark and remembered your own light. And now you carry that light not as a performance, but as a frequency. One that shakes rooms. One that bends timelines. One that no longer needs to prove anything because it simply is. This is the moment where the dark chosen one begins to shift from student to master. Not because they know more, but because they've unlearned enough to remember what's always been true. That real power is not about controlling energy, but it's about embodying truth. You don't need to manipulate reality when you become aligned with the source of it. You don't need to predict the future when you're fully present now. And you don't need to be seen to be significant, because your very existence is a vibration the universe responds to. But the sacred breakdown is not the end. It's the purification before the becoming. And when you pass through it, you don't just come back stronger. You come back unshakable. The final trial, how the fifth shadow test forces the dark chosen one to face the ultimate betrayer themselves, There comes a moment in every true dark chosen one's journey where the enemy is no longer external. It's not the family that misunderstood you. It's not the world that rejected you. It's not the lovers who walked away or the systems that tried to silence your voice. No, this final test is far more intimate, far more piercing. It's the confrontation with yourself. The final shadow test is the moment you're forced to face the ultimate betrayer, you. And nothing can prepare you for the rawness of that encounter. This is not about guilt. This is not about shame. This is about truth. At this point in the path, you've survived rejection, betrayal, collapse, and the sacred silence. You've stripped away the false identities and walked through the fire of ego death. But there's one last piece that must be faced before your full power can be embodied, and that is the part of you that chose the wounds, that clung to the pain, and that used your story to delay your own becoming. It's the part of you that sabotaged your own light, even while praying for liberation. And here's what most spiritual teachings won't say: sometimes the most dangerous energy in your life is your own unconsciousness. This test arrives subtly. It doesn't feel like a battle at first. It feels like fatigue, like confusion, like procrastination. You start delaying the work. You start questioning your readiness. You tell yourself you need more time, more healing, more confirmation. But deep down, you know you're hiding. Not from the world, not even from the divine. You're hiding from your own responsibility. Because stepping into your peak power doesn't just mean being seen. It means being accountable for what that power can do. And that level of responsibility is terrifying. Because now you can no longer blame the past. You can no longer point fingers. You are the creator. And everything in your life becomes a mirror for your frequency. So the test begins. The universe stops protecting you from yourself. Every illusion you've kept as a comfort begins to crack. The lies you told yourself become louder. The excuses no longer work. You start to visibly see the places where you've been your own jailer. The moments you betrayed your own intuition. The people you kept around because you were afraid of your own expansion. The times you silenced your voice because you feared its impact. And that realization cuts deeper than any betrayal ever could. Because now the question becomes, what will you do with the truth that you were the one holding the knife? This is the moment where many chosen ones fall into despair. They confuse self-awareness with self-hatred. But that's not the purpose of this test. The purpose is integration. You are not being shown your darkness so you can drown in it. You are being shown your darkness so you can reclaim your power from it. Every time you betrayed yourself, it wasn't because you were evil. It was because you were afraid. And now, the fear has nowhere left to hide. You are cracked open, exposed, vulnerable, but also free. Because the moment you admit your role in your own pain, you also open the door to your own healing. Let me ask you something that very few people ever dare to answer honestly. What part of you benefits from staying small? What part of you is still addicted to the struggle, to being the underdog, to being the misunderstood one? Because as long as those parts remain unexamined, your power will stay fragmented. You'll keep creating half-lives, half-truths, half-healings. But the dark chosen one is not here to live halfway. You are here to embody the whole. And that requires forgiving yourself radically, completely, without condition. Forgiveness is not a spiritual bypass. It's a reclamation. You forgive not to forget, but to free the energy. You forgive because you finally see yourself clearly. You see the child who was scared. You see the teen who didn't know better. You see the adult who was trying to survive. And in that seeing, compassion is born not just for yourself, but for everyone who ever hurt you. Because you realize they were facing their own final test too, and maybe they failed. But you don't have to. The final shadow test doesn't end with applause. There's no grand reward, no fireworks. What you get instead is something far more sacred: alignment. Your soul, your shadow, your spirit, and your power all come into coherence. You become a unified field of truth. Nothing hidden, nothing denied, nothing feared. And from that place, everything changes. Your energy speaks louder than your words. Your presence becomes a portal. You stop trying to change the world, and instead, you become the frequency that transforms it just by existing. This is the moment you become untouchable, not because you are invincible, but because you are integrated. Your shadow is not your enemy anymore. It's your companion, your guide, your teacher. You don't run from it. You walk with it. And that's the mark of a true dark chosen one. Not someone who overcame darkness, but someone who learned to wield it with wisdom. The arrival: what happens when a dark chosen one fully activates their peak power? When a dark chosen one finally passes through all 5 shadow tests, something extraordinary happens, not in the sky, not in the heavens, but deep within the architecture of their soul. There is no trumpet sound, no celebration, no instant enlightenment. What arrives instead is stillness, a silence so profound it speaks louder than any cosmic voice. You don't feel bigger, you feel clearer. You don't feel superior, you feel anchored. It's not the kind of power that makes you want to boast or perform. It's the kind of power that makes you want to serve, because you now understand what it cost you to become who you are. When you arrive at this stage, your energy becomes undeniable. You no longer need to convince anyone of your value. You no longer seek validation from those who never had the capacity to see you. You stop chasing destiny and instead, you become it. You walk into rooms and shift the vibration without trying. People feel your presence before they hear your voice. Not because you're loud, but because you're real. And in a world of masks and mimicry, truth is magnetic. But here's the paradox: the more powerful you become, the less you need to use that power. You don't control people. You don't manipulate timelines. You don't force outcomes. You've learned that true power is influence without interference. You've mastered the art of moving energy simply by being aligned. You become a living frequency, one that recalibrates everything around it just by existing. And that's when you realize something you couldn't have seen before: you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to change the fabric of reality. At this stage, your gifts begin to unlock in ways that defy logic. Your intuition sharpens, your voice carries weight, your presence heals. You begin to receive downloads, visions, ideas that seem to come from nowhere, but you know they come from the source that's been guiding you all along. The same source that took you through every shadow test. The same source that let you fall, bleed, break, and rise again. You now realize none of it was random. Every storm trained you. Every silence refined you. Every betrayal redirected you. And now you're ready. Ready for what, you ask? To walk as a god among men without ever needing to be worshipped. To be the quiet storm, the walking mirror, the unshakable presence that reminds others of who they are. You're not here to be followed. You're here to awaken others to themselves. That's the final transformation. You stop trying to lead, and instead you become the path. You don't tell people what to believe. You live in such alignment that your life becomes the evidence. No argument, no debate, just truth in motion. But remember, this arrival is not the end. It's the beginning of the real mission. Because now that you've reclaimed your power, the responsibility starts. The choices matter more. The energy you carry affects more people. You can no longer afford to act unconsciously. You can no longer indulge in cycles that dilute your vibration. You are now a vessel, and what you carry is sacred. You've passed through the dark, not to escape it, but to carry wisdom back for the world. You are now a bridge between dimensions, between frequencies, between the seen and unseen. And what's wild is, no one might ever know what you went through. There will be no documentary, no viral clip, no applause. But you will know, and the universe will know. And the souls you silently activate will feel it, even if they never say a word. But that's the beauty of becoming. You don't need recognition when you're walking in divine resonance. You don't need approval when you're vibrating in full coherence. You don't need permission to shine when you've already died and been reborn into your own light. So if you're here, if you felt every word, every test, every shiver of recognition, then let me say this with all the fire of truth in my chest: you made it. You've crossed through shadows that would have broken others. You've faced mirrors that showed you everything you feared. You've lost timelines, people, illusions, and still you rose. And now you are no longer just chosen. You are activated, and the world will never be the same again. Now walk, not to prove anything, but because your walk itself is a prophecy fulfilled.